Okay, this is video 2 on some guidelines for MLA citation and for formatting. I already covered formatting in the first video. Now we're going to look at works cited pages, works cited entries, and in-text citations. All right, and I mentioned in the previous video, whenever you're citing sources, a proper citation requires two parts. There is an in-text citation and a works cited entry. Those are both required. If you're missing one of those things, then technically you're in the world of plagiarism. And I'm teaching you this so that you're consistently following these rules. I'm using MLA format. The same basic rules apply no matter what the style you're using. You do need an in-text citation that is then connected to a works cited entry for each thing that you're referencing. All right. So let me direct you again to the shared screen over here. All right. And this is the document that I created in the first video. It's kind of full of nonsense text, but it's just to give you an idea of what it looks like. I still have these non-printable characters visible to us. All right. But you can easily turn that off if you're on this home tab here at this paragraph symbol. If you click that, that all goes away. All right. And even if you do leave it on, you will not see it when you hit print. All right. Sometimes I like to write with that on because it keeps me organized, helps me visualize where everything is on my page. Okay. Let's address a couple of these terms. First, works cited page, always the last page in your document. Okay. Second, works cited entry. All right. This is where you will list all of the different sources that you have used, no matter how many there are. There might be one, there might be 30. Okay. Whatever ends up on this page, you want to have the most accurate information you can provide as to the source. And you will put all those sources in alphabetical order. All right. And I'm going to show you what that's going to look like here. So I'm going to be dragging some stuff on and off this shared screen as I work so you can see what I'm doing. So my example for the title was on Sir Francis Drake. So I looked up some sources on Sir Francis Drake to pretend that I would be using them as a source here. All right. So basically, I just Googled Sir Francis Drake and I found stuff that seems credible. All right. The first thing I found came from Britannica. So here's a little article on the Britannica website, which is pretty reputable as far as, general encyclopedia information. And then I also found another site that comes from somewhere called the Historic UK. Okay. There's an article here about Sir Francis Drake. I want to start with that one. Let me make this big so we can see it. Okay. Now, to make your life easy, there's tons of different free citation generators. Generally, I like to just do it myself and I just follow the guidelines the MLA gives and I type it out myself. But these tools do exist, so I'm going to use one provided by Grammarly. So if you just Google Grammarly citation generator, it'll take you to this page. And this works out pretty well. Now, I have it filled in, but I'm going to show you what I did to get all this information. So from this one, from Historic UK, here's the article titled Sir Francis Drake. All right. And then there's an author. So we go to the citation generator provided by Grammarly. We select what type of source we're using. In this case, it's a website. Okay. And that'll adjust what information it asks for too. All right. But since we're on a website, this is what we got. It asks you for a contributor. And in this case, it's an author. Now, there might not always be an author. And you'll see that here in the Britannica website. There's not a specific, oh no, there is a specific author here. I got ahead of myself. I'll find you a source that doesn't have an author. But basically the rule is if there is no information, then you omit it from your works cited entry. Since we have an author, we're going to include it. His name was Ben Johnson. So I typed it right in there as it was written on the website. Ben, last name Johnson. You see that comes from right here. All right. So what's it asking for next? Title. All right. Well, that's the title of the page, the title of the article that we're referencing. All right. Where we found our information. The title is simply Sir Francis Drake. So we're going to include that there as the title. Bang. All right, now it asks you for the website name. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky because depending on where you look, you might come up with two different answers. Right here at the top of the page, it says Historic UK, the History and Heritage Accommodation Guide. Do you just put Historic UK? Do you put all of this information? And if I hover my mouse, or if I actually, what I'll do is I'll open a new tab. I'm going to click there to open this in a new tab. There's the home page. All right, it says the same thing here. If I hover my mouse over that, it says again, Historic UK, the History and Magazine, and Heritage Accommodation Guide. So you'll see there's three different things. Do I just put Historic UK? Do I put what it says here, the History and Heritage Accommodation Guide? Or when I hover the mouse and it gives me this other information, it says Historic UK, the History Magazine, and Heritage Accommodation Guide. I think you would be sufficient to just put Historic UK. However, since this one has the most information, that's the one I'm going to use. All right, it seems to be the most accurate. The History UK, the History Magazine, and Heritage Accommodation Guide. And I want to type that exactly as it's written there, including like the ampersand instead of the word and. So I'm going to include it with that because it has the most detail. So I go back to my free citation generator, and it says Historic UK, the History Magazine, and Heritage Accommodation Guide. That's what I chose to use for the full title. All right. I think that's the safest bet. But if you did just put Historic UK, that's probably okay. Err on the side of more. Okay. Now, one other thing, formatting does sort of matter, right? So this is a dash, Historic UK dash, the History Magazine and Heritage Accommodation Guide. So I'm going to change this. I had a colon there at first. I'm going to make it actually match what was written on the site. So Historic UK space dash space, the History Magazine and Heritage Accommodation Guide. Got the full title, right? Full website name. Now it asks for a publishing date. Typically, publication information is either right at the beginning or right at the end of a web page. All right, that's different if it's a book. That's usually in the, there's like a whole page dedicated to publication information. But since we're on this website, we're going to look. All it says at the top here is the author. So if I scroll down to the bottom of the article, that's where it ends. There's nothing more added there at the end of the article. So I'm going to go down to the entire website. Now here is usually what you're looking for. It'll say a copyright, right? Copyright, Historic UK Limited, company registered in England and with our business number. Now, there is no date. There is no publication date here. What do? I already told you. If there is no date provided, you leave it out. Okay? Because you're not going to make something up. You don't make something up because if you're wrong, technically you're, misrepresenting where you get the information from. So since they have not published anything about a date, we're going to omit it. When you look at the Grammarly, this is an important piece of information. So it's flagging that, saying it's missing, but it's not there. So we're going to just let it be blank. I've seen other websites where it might just have a year. Okay. So if it does just have a year, let's say it was last updated 2023, maybe that's all it'll say. Well, then I would put December 31st, 2023, because to me, that covers the whole year. All right. Or maybe you could even get away with just putting in the year if that were there. Let me see how that adjusted this. Didn't even include it. Yeah. So this particular generator is not going to allow like a partial entry. It needs a full entry for it to populate that field. So depending on the website, you're going to be finding certain information, and sometimes it's just not provided. Since it's not provided, we're going to leave it out. The next thing it asks for is the URL. And I'm going to give them the exact URL from the page with the article. All right, not the home page. We don't want to do that. We're going to give them the page with the article and just copy that right out of the address bar. All right, you can Control C, copy that, and then paste it into here. And you got the URL. And it asks you for the date that you accessed it. I use today's date. Done deal. And over here on the side, it has given you an MLA full citation preview. You can copy that citation, click the button, or you can highlight it and do Control C. Come back to your Word document, and we're going to paste that right there on the last page. All right. The final thing then about formatting that is goofy, and I'm sure there's a better way to do this in Word, but I'm not familiar with it. I was more familiar with how to use Google Docs. You can actually highlight the whole entry in Google Docs and click a style button somewhere that changes it to what's called a hanging indent. Okay, so a typical indentation, like in a paragraph, is like this. The first line is indented. But a hanging indent is kind of the opposite of this. The first line is not indented, and the rest of the things, if it goes to more lines, those are all indented. So this gets a little stupid, I think, but we have to learn how to do it because these are the rules of formatting, right, in this field. And this is a professional field, just like any other profession. You know, if you're playing basketball, you can't just carry the ball. You're disqualified, right? You're called for traveling, right? If you dribble and pick up the ball and then dribble again, you get a double dribble, right? Like you have to follow the rules within that context. And the MLA provides those rules for us. So here's the best way that I have found to do this. You might think, all right, my second and third lines need to be indented. So let me go put my cursor on the second line and hit indent. Watch what happens when I hit tab. It moves the whole thing because computers are stupid. It's trying to think for me. It thinks I want that whole paragraph indented. I don't. I only want the second line and any other lines after that indented. So let me Control Z and undo that. This is the trick that I learned when I was probably in 8th grade or maybe even 9th grade. While these computers are brilliant machines and they try to make our lives easier, sometimes they think for us and it actually works against what I want to happen. So I try to outsmart the computer. So what I will do is I'll leave the first line exactly as it is. I'll move my cursor to the second line. And if I hit enter, it creates what the computer sees as a new paragraph. You see that paragraph symbol is there. And then I will tab. Okay. Now the problem is this goes to a third line. So I have to indent that as well. So if I go to that third line and hit tab, it'll move it over. It's almost right. Okay. What's it doing wrong? You notice this extra space here. We don't want that. And that's the same thing that I showed you in the first video. So we're going to go back and adjust that. I'm going to hit Control A so that it selects the entire document again. I'm going to go to Layout and see here where it's got this spacing after a paragraph. We're going to make sure that that's set to 0. And that did it. Okay. Is that the best professional way to do it? Probably not. I'm sure that somebody out there who's more familiar with Word knows a better way. However, this works. It works great and it looks great. Now I've got my entry with a hanging indent. The first thing I see when I look at it is this last name of the author, Johnson. And then everything else fits right under that heading. That's what's called a hanging indent. All right. And that one is finished. Then you move forward with any other works cited entries you might have. So I'm going to make another one with you right now from the other website too. So let me go back to the Britannica site. It's here. Let me shrink that. Where did it go? There we go. All right. We're still on a website, but now we've got new information. So we're going to clear this stuff out. That's already gone. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of this. All right. Now we're blank again. All right. So if I go to Britannica, now I've got another site. What's the first thing we're going to be looking for? An author. Well, we've got two. We've got Bradford, Ernle, E-R-N-L-E, Ernle Bradford. All right, so we're going to go write that in here. Ernle Bradford. And that's all it said. There's no other additional things, so we're going to leave that. But we have another author here. Felipe Fernandez Armesto. Let's see if I can copy his name so I get all the proper formatting there. Well, there he is. I clicked his link and there it comes. So I'm going to go there and I'm going to copy that, Control C. He's a contributor. So we go back here and we're going to add a contributor. I'm going to just paste what I got there and I'm going to leave his first name, Control X, cut his last name, and I'm going to move that over there to last name. All right, and you see it's starting to put this all together on this preview for me. All right, and that's what we got so far. And we come down here to full citation. Now we need the title. So back here again, I want to go back to there, the article page. Sir Francis Drake, English Admiral. All right, so there's a title and subtitle. We're going to use that all. All right, we're going to copy that and paste it in here. Sir Francis Drake, English Admiral. And from this homepage, since that's a subtitle, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it. You can either put like a colon or you can do a space and a dash. Either one's fine. I'm going to do a colon this time just because I like the way it looks. All right, it's nice and neat, and it's very clear that that's the subtitle. All right, we got our author, and then it continues on with more information about him. Also, a lot of ads. Anyway, website name, Britannica. Now, let's see if we have any more that we could pull from here. Encyclopedia Britannica with a subtitle of Britannica. Since it's just Britannica, let's just use this time. All right, Britannica. That's it. Website name, Britannica. Did I spell it right? Double check. Britain, double N-I-C-A. Britain, double N-I-C-A. Got it. All right, now let's look for a publication date. Keep clicking the wrong tab. Let me get rid of some of these older ones since we already used them. All right. Publication date. I'm going to look at the top first. Let's see if there's anything here. Yeah, there it is. Last updated February 12th, 2025. Hey, that's pretty recent. So we're going to go and add that to the publication date since it was last updated. We're going to go 02, 12, 25. Then we need the URL. Again, copy and paste it right from the address bar. And then what date did we access it? That's today. Today is the 21st. Done. We've got our next one. All right, so let's copy that citation. Let's go back to our Word document, and we're going to paste it. Now, we got to play around with the formatting a little bit more. Just like we did before, you'll notice that extra space is gone since we fixed it already for the whole document. But I'm going to do my same trick again. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to hit tab. And then since I have a third line, I'm going to tab that over as well. Now I've got my two works cited entries. These have to be in alphabetical order, though. And you'll notice Johnson does not come before Bradford in the alphabet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut that entire thing, Control X. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to hit enter to have a new space. I'm going to paste it into place. And there you go. We do have extra space now between these entries. You can delete that. That's fine since they stand out because of the hanging indent. And this works cited page is coming together perfectly. All right. That's only one part of your citation rule, though. You also have to have these in-text citations. Okay. What does that mean? It's kind of self-defined. In text. The other portion of the citation is contained within the text you wrote. Okay? So, an in-text citation can be either a direct quote or paraphrased information. Okay, what do I mean by this? Let's go back to one of these sites and pull some information. All right, let's go to this Britannica one. And we will just pull some information here that says that when Drake was about 18, he enlisted in the Hawkins family fleet, which prowled for shipping to plunder or seize off the French coast. We're going to take that whole sentence. All right, maybe we're going to in our paper describe his early life as a sailor. Let's just pretend that that's in here. Let me find the end of a sentence. All right. And I'm going to add some stuff here. We could say that Francis Drake began sailing at a young age, right? Then I'm going to use direct borrowed language, so I need quotation marks. I'll paste the line that I not stole, but I borrowed, and I'm going to close it in quotation marks. Now, I'm going to delete the period that ends the sentence because it doesn't belong there yet. Now we're going to include an in-text citation. That is contained in parentheses inside what you have written. Okay. Inside this parentheses, you are going to put whatever the first thing is that you see on your works cited entry. All right, since this came from the Britannica site, the author's name is Bradford. So we're going to copy the name Bradford, and we're going to type that in there in those parentheses. And you have a correctly formatted in-text citation. Now, you noticed I deleted the period from the borrowed sentence. You shouldn't have that period in here because you've made that borrowed language a part of your sentence. The parentheses is in your text. So the punctuation needs to come after the parentheses. So you can see it right there after the parentheses. I'm going to turn off these paragraph symbols here so that it's a little clearer. All right. And I don't know if I can zoom it in. Yeah, I can do that. All right. Makes it a little clearer for you. See, here's my sentence. Francis Drake began sailing at a young age, period. And then I borrowed language. When Francis Drake was about 18, he enlisted in the Hawkins family fleet, which prowled for shipping and plunder or seas off the French coast. End quote. But because I need the in-text citation, my sentence ends after this. All right. This will make a little more sense when I show you another way you can do this, because there's more than one way to incorporate borrowed language. This would be one way. But now let's say stylistically, I want to express it differently. I might say Francis Drake began sailing at about 18. Now, see, I'm kind of quoting a fragment. You are permitted to quote sentence fragments as long as you're attaching them to your own words that create a complete sentence. So now look at how this looks. Francis Drake began sailing at, quote, about 18. He enlisted in the Hawkins family fleet, which prowled for shipping to plunder seas off the French coast. And then this in-text citation would still be the same. So I've taken a sentence fragment and attached it to my own sentence fragment, making a complete sentence. You don't really read these quotes. Those are just indicators to me that you've borrowed your language from someone else. Also, you don't have to necessarily end your sentence right here. Okay. You maybe have more to say. So how could this look? Francis Drake began sailing at about 18. He enlisted in the Hawkins family fleet, which prowled for shipping to plunder or seize off the French coast, which was the beginnings of his career at sea. So I've now incorporated borrowed language into a bigger sentence. But my in-text citation stays right where it is after the borrowed language. And then because my sentence has more thoughts, the period comes here. That's why your punctuation doesn't go inside the quotation, it comes after, because you have these options in how you incorporate that borrowed language. All right. So I've just showed you 3 different ways of incorporating the same information in 3 different, slightly different styles. All right. So keep that in mind. Now this is your in-text citation, and that points me directly to the source on your works cited page with that same author. All right. The other thing that can count as an in-text citation is paraphrased information. That's where you put information you got somewhere else in your own words. You don't use quotation marks because you're not borrowing it directly, but you're paraphrasing it. When you paraphrase, you will still put the parentheses after that paraphrased information. So, for example, let's look back here again, right? I'm going to read a little bit further here. And let's say here by 1568, he had command of his own ship on a Hawkins venture of illicit slave trading in the Spanish colonies of the Caribbean. All right. I'm going to paraphrase that and say, let's say, eventually, Sir Francis Drake commanded his own ship involved in the slave trading. We'll just simplify it that much. All right. So I come back here and I'll add that maybe later on in the paragraph. Eventually, we'll say Drake. It's a little more formal to do that. Eventually, Drake commanded a slave trading ship. I changed it a little bit. All right. But since that's borrowed from the same source, we're going to add that in text citation. I spelled it wrong. There we go. Bradford. And we have another one. The presence of this in text citation tells me that the information preceding it was taken from somewhere else, but you've paraphrased it into your own words. Therefore, it doesn't need the quotation marks. Both of those things count as in-text citations, and both of them point to the appropriate source on the works cited page. All right. I know I'm throwing kind of a lot at you here, but I think that this is useful stuff that now that you have this basic understanding of, you'll be able to adapt it to whatever sources you are finding. All right. One more note. Certain sources do not always have authors. For example, it may be written by an organization, right, or published by another, like a company. So if I go back here to, let's Google and see if we can find one. Sir Francis Drake. Let's try history.com. Maybe that one doesn't have an author. Let's see. See, this says history.com editors. There's not a single named author. All right. So in that case, when we go to our citation generator, we would leave them off. Let me see if I can add. You could put history.com editors. Now it's all whacked out. All right, let me delete the rest of this stuff and start with a blank slate. Sometimes you just got to go back to the drawing board. There. And for some reason, it's still saying Bradford. Oh, I left his name. That's why. All right. So let's put it here and maybe we'll say history.com editors. I don't like that. Since it's not named, it doesn't seem like it makes sense that you would put that there. Yeah. I would have to verify that with the MLA, but I don't think you would include that. Since there's no specific author, same rule applies that I told you before. You omit it. So don't put an author. But then you would put the title, which in this case is simply Sir Francis Drake. So let's include that here in title. Yeah. And see, I'm thinking this through as I'm going, and that's kind of what you need to do as you're building these. So since there is no clear author, I'm not going to include that, but we're going to put Sir Francis Drake as the title. The website is, let's see, it's just called History. Yeah. So let's add that. What a great business move. End up with the title History. All right. Do they have a publication date? Updated June 6, 2023. So we're going to add that. 06/06, 2023. URL. Copy the URL, paste it into there. And the date accessed, again, we'll say today. Now we have our citation. Let's add this to our document. Now we got to make our couple adjustments. All right. Since we're onto that second line, we're going to hit enter and then tab, and we're in good shape. All right. Now, since there is no author, the next thing you see is the title. Whatever your in-text citation is going to match whatever the first thing in the works cited entry is. So if we're citing this source, we're going to copy this, quotes and all right, because those quotes are formatting telling me that that's a title. And if we had a quote, say, in here, let's say this sentence was taken from that site, we're going to put in parentheses. I don't want the whole thing. Hold on a second. I just want the title. There we go. And then we close the quote and put the period there. I'm going to remove the period from inside there because it's confusing to have multiple periods. All right. But that's how an in-text citation would look if you have no author. All right. It would contain the title. If it's a long title, let's pretend that the title was Sir Francis Drake, World Voyager from the 1500s. You don't have to write all of that. You could just abbreviate it down to Sir Francis Drake or even Sir Francis. Okay. And that points to the first couple words in the works cited entry. So you have a little bit of flexibility there so that you don't get these huge parenthetical citations. All right. You want to keep them kind of short because they point like a key from where you're citing something in the document to where the information is found on the works cited page. And that's as simple as that. And if I look this over again, B comes first, J comes next, S comes last. So this would be correct for three sources in alphabetical order. And they're either by author's last name or title, whichever one you have. And that's how you incorporate these things properly. All right. Remember that paraphrasing or direct quotes both count as in-text citations, but you got to give credit where credit is due. Okay. So that is my tutorial on how to format and how to structure a works cited page and how to gather some information to help you with that. If you have different sources that are not websites, the same rules basically apply, but the information that they ask for might be slightly different. For example, I'm back here on the Grammarly site. Let me give it a blank slate again. Let's say you were citing an online video. So it kind of changes a little bit of what it asks for. So if you're on YouTube, you would put the title of the video. You would put the website name, which is youtube.com, right? Or you could just put YouTube, right? The username or channel name, maybe it's Captivating History, right? Or if it's not a channel name, then put the name of the person who published it, right? The date that it was published, and then you copy and paste the URL in the same way, and it'll generate your citation over here. You can always click on this tab, then in-text citation, and it'll show you how you put that in parentheses then as well. All right, but go with the guidelines that I've told you, and everything should be good. If you're citing a book, it's going to ask you for some different stuff here. Again, if you don't know, like, if there's no edition, if there's no volume, not every book is like the third edition or something like that, or volume 5 or something like that. You don't have to include that. You leave them out. Just put everything that you have, including the publication city and so on. And then if it's certain pages of a book, you can put the pages there too. And it's all included. And you'll copy and paste that over with the same formatting that I've showed you, like this. Okay. If you do have any questions about any of this stuff, you can see me. If you run into a different type of source, like say you interviewed someone, like a personal interview, you can do that. And I can help guide you with how to fill out that information. This does not have personal interview as an option on here, but there's other citation generators that you could find. You want to just stick to MLA for everything English related. English and social studies, the humanities usually stick to these. All right. I know that's kind of a lot. It's not very hard. It just takes a little bit of time. I showed you some shortcut keys and some tricks there. You can do that hanging indent format. That's the way that I've always done it, and it works great. If you know anything more than that, reach out to me and tell me how to do it. And maybe it's even easier. But for what you need to know to get you started, I think that this is sufficient. All right. And you end up with a beautifully formatted paper. It looks professional, which is kind of the goal. And your information is then properly cited and credited so you can't be accused of plagiarism. All right. If you just copy and paste that stuff that you took from the websites into your document without adding any of this citation stuff, that's plagiarism. Don't do it. That's a serious academic offense. You can be kicked out of college for it. All right. Because you're entering a world that is a professional field. And inside that field, there's certain rules that dictate how we communicate. Now you've been introduced to them. I want you to use them as I ask you to provide sources on these more formal assignments that require works cited. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm here to help. I'm not here to punish you for plagiarizing. I'm here to teach you what it is so you can avoid it. All right. And I'm here to help you with some of those more obscure types of sources that might need a little bit more attention to cite them properly. All right. So see me with any questions and good luck on your writing.